Okay. It's about 10:41 at night while I'm recording this. Um, if you haven't heard, Games Workshop just revealed 10th edition. Holy piss. Uh, they revealed Lionel Johnson, new Primaris Terminators, new Primaris combi weapons. Basically, they're just replacing old Marines with Primaris. This was coming for like ages. This is nothing new. We all suspected this was going to happen. Whatever. I have my gripe right now, and that is what they're planning to do. We're going back to the start of 8th edition. And in my opinion, that's a bad idea. So a little bit of fundamental history while I talk about this. Warhammer was a much more bloated and complex game because it had 7 editions running on end with constant updates to the rules, constant keywords being added to the game that people would have to keep track of, and it just got insane. So Games Workshop, knowing that they weren't getting new customers in because their game was bloated with so many rules that a regular person would feel overwhelmed trying to get into it, they revamped 40K, reworking the game from the ground up to be something new, which is where we got 8th edition. However, with 8th edition, since they rebuilt the rules from the ground up, every army had to be reset to 0. And that is perfectly fine. That is perfectly okay. And 8th edition was Warhammer's most successful edition. It revitalized the community. It revitalized interest in Warhammer. It probably single-handedly brought Warhammer into the mainstream because it was a less bloated game and it was easy to understand and grasp for the majority of people. There are some people that still struggle to understand it, my fiance being one. I have tried to explain to them. Their brain struggles with trying to count backwards on a dice. Is the best way to explain it. And then the codexes were released. Command points were a thing. And slowly, the problems of 8th edition and 9th edition made themselves known. It was no longer a game of strategy. It was no longer a game of who could outwit the other, a game of chance. It was who saved their command points or built their army to maximize command points. So that way you could get overpowered and stupid, swingy-ass abilities that would just let you win the game. Some armies that were printed were just basically read, win the game. Win the game. It's the equivalent of Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! Just having a card that says win. This led to the worst tournament ever made. The worst tournament that happened, which was Imperial Fists versus Iron Warriors, and it was literally the immovable object meets the unstoppable force. It was the most boring 6-turn game Warhammer had ever seen, where models just refused to die on both sides. And it was a slog. It was the most boring thing anyone could have watched. And it was because stratagems. It was because command points. And that they gave these unfair abilities and unfair advantages to armies that didn't need them. Stratagems inherently make a game less complex, in my opinion. Because it's not a matter of what interesting units can I take. It's what does this stratagem do for this unit and maximize their efficiency. Games Workshop has never been a game company. They say their name suggests that they are, but every time you read their financials, every time you read a letter to their the investors, it is always, we are a model company first. Games Workshop doesn't care about the game. That is more than self-evident. Now, they'll still put effort into it. They still have people who they hire to make the game. But Games Workshop sells this, first and foremost. Models first. Models always first. And then make the rules cool. Make it so that you are playing that character, that army. How they are written in the books that we push. Essentially, the argument that you are the kid in the sandbox saying, "No, you can't do that, because my army has a anti-pool shield," is kind of the way to go for Games Workshop. And that's fair. That is perfectly fine. They are trying to sell an army. They want that army to look cool. That is completely okay. Sorry. I had a long stream too after this. It was Resident Evil, but whatever. Anyway. Then 9th edition came, and we could tell that shit was going off the rails real fucking quick. Armies became way too swingy. Stratagems that were overpowered now got nerfed, granted, but then there were just other stratagems that kicked up more problems. Armies that didn't need to get nerfed got nerfed. Armies that got buffed got way too heavily buffed. And then the problems came down to rules bloat again solely because of stratagems. Now it wasn't a fact of trying to keep track of like special abilities. It was, what the fuck does this army do? What are they doing? And it was 9 times out of 10, if you got your new book, you were the coolest kid on the block. You were the one smashing tournaments. When the Leagues of Votann came out, they broke the game in half. And that was a major problem for both competitive and local fun time. 40K became a game of pay to win in a lot of ways in 9th edition. And it's why I stopped playing for a time. Because I just was getting sick of showing up and getting my army blown off the board because of one stratagem that my opponent used just decimating me. And I could do everything in my power to try and stop it. Wouldn't work. I could play what was considered the best competitive army for my book. Get absolutely fucking thrashed. And it all comes down to command points and stratagems. That little bit of extra. It's a constant worry in the back of your head. How much command points do I have? Can I do this? Can I do that? Instead of just focusing on the goddamn game. Making a game more complex is not an issue. It's when the problem itself comes from a mechanic in the game. And stratagems, in my opinion, and you can feel free to disagree with me, stratagems, in my opinion, were the biggest fucking hassle. I should care about what's in front of me, instead of what's not. And I don't mean like, oh, enemies hiding off the board. Genestealer cults being able to like infiltrate on the table, that's sick as fuck. Khorne Berserker, World Leaders getting blood tied. Again, that was awesome. The different armies getting like all their unique special things is really, really cool. But 10th edition is going back to indexes. and we're keeping stratagems. Granted, there's only 6 now per army. There's only 6. There's only 6 kids. There's only 6 stratagems per army. What does that solve? What fundamentally does that solve? Is this going to be an index-only edition? Okay. If that's the case, then a lot of my complaints are alleviated in a lot of ways. But at the same time, stratagems are still the main source of the problem. An army was unique from its army ability, not from its stratagems. Ultramarines were unique because they could pull out of combat and still shoot. Granted, at a -1 to hit, and they got +1 leadership. That's what made them their own thing. You could plan gun lines around that. Goth Clan for orcs. It's charge and get extra attacks. And exploding 6s because they're the killiest, they're the toughest. That's their unique thing. Ulthwé for Eldar. They got feel no pain. And like better magic because they're the witches of the Eldar. That's what made them unique. Stratagems inherently do not do anything but make a game highly more swingy. And it's just basically playing a force of will on the field. Or a Ash Blossom. For you card game players out there. And if this isn't an index-only edition, if we're only doing indexes to reset everybody to 0, you're just going to have the same fucking problem that you had back in 8th. Where when new books came out, I got stratagems. I got more than you do. That doesn't help anybody. That doesn't make anything better. It just makes the game go back to swingy. I.e., we're back to square one. Jesus Christ. I hate that, like, you can hear, like, a motorcycle out there. I'm sorry if you hear that in the audio. I do not like this. Now, granted, the edition isn't even out. The edition isn't even out yet. We still gotta wait for the Arc of Omens to be done. And then 10th edition will be released. Which then, big release, new rulebook, so on and so forth. And I will be getting it. I will be doing this. Because Warhammer is my hobby. It is something that I have invested years of my life into. Years of my life. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to see this. Do I want 40K to be a more accessible game? Yes. I would love this game to be so accessible that my fiancé and I can throw corn units at each other, screaming blood for the blood god. She calls me a bastard. I call her a bitch. It's a fun-ass time. But this is like trying to catch a mouse with a bear trap, in my opinion. Are stratagems fundamentally a horrible idea? No, they are not. I like the basic ones. Free reroll for a single dice. Free bravery test. You don't fail. Set to defend. If they were just universal stratagems for every army to use, there was no like Ultramarines can do this specific thing that only they can do and makes the game horrifically swingy for them. That's my problem. Is when they're too hyper-specific. When Space Marines had transhuman physiology, where they can just say, fuck you, you can only hurt me on a 4 and up. On a d6 dice, d6, you can only hurt them on a 4. You only hurt them on a 4 and higher. 1, 2, 3, fuck you. You get nothing. That was stupid. And that was universal for Space Marines for most of 8th edition. Sure, they then turned it to Primaris Marines, but guess what? Everyone just started playing Primaris Marines. Because it was the only thing worth playing. It was boring. You don't build an army to be tactically interesting. You don't build an army to fit the lore. You build the army to fit a fucking stratagem. And that's boring as shit. That's boring as all hell. I hope I'm making sense. I really am. But, like, in my opinion, either stratagems just need to be a universal thing in the rulebook only, or they just need to be gone. Stratagems fundamentally either need to be universal for everybody, with no specifics, i.e., you use the universal stuff in interesting ways to make the game more interesting, instead of just pay 2 for +1 to hit with rerolls, because I built my whole army around this. Or do what Horus Heresy did with reactions. Reactions are just fine. I would be fine with the reaction system in 40k. It would make more sense. Universal reactions that everyone can do. Every unit gets one reaction that they can do. Or one army gets a whole reaction they can do for that turn. Balances it out. That way it fundamentally shifts the game to, how do I stop this? Instead of just like, oh, well, this is inevitable. We're all playing with the same deck of cards, which makes the game more interesting because it makes people have to think about how to use that deck of cards. Instead of just +1 to hit, reroll, mortal wounds on 6s, with a bonus it's 5s. Go to game 2. If you don't agree with me, you don't agree with me. There are plenty of people that love the stratagem system, and it's fine if you do. I'm worried that this is just going to be a band-aid on a dam that's ready to burst. But we're going to have to see. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I've been wrong in the past. Fuck, I didn't think Lionel Johnson would make it out of 10th, like make it before 10th edition. I thought he would be released in 10th edition as like the thing that happened in 10th edition. Like it's another Primarch Storm thing coming. That like we have Gullyman, now we got Lionel. Where Gullyman's leading Imperium, like the regular Imperium, Lionel is leading the Imperial Nihilus. Like that kind of thing. But here we are. I am skeptical, but I am hopeful. I want 40k to be as accessible as possible to those who are interested in the grim darkness of the far future. And I will be doing as much as I can. And when 10th edition comes out, I will buy it. I will be purchasing it. I will be studying it to either see if I'm right or if I'm wrong. I am not so proud of myself that I can't admit when I'm wrong. Because I've been wrong in the past, and I'll continue to be wrong about things in the future. No one can be right 100% of the time. So if 10th edition turns out to be another 8th edition, Sick! Awesome! But if it turns out to be another 9th edition, or even worse, 7th, we'll just have to see. All in all, I'm glad that the line is back. I'm glad that we got another Loyalist Primarch. I'm glad that we're getting Primaris Terminators. That was very interesting. It seems like they're going to be doing more alien-focused content for the next little bit after this Chaos Invasion and Arc of Omens. So we will see what happens next. And I will see you all this Saturday with my review of Hi-Fi Rush. So can't wait to see you all there. So I'm gonna go. It is late at night. I am absolutely done. And this is gonna be like not even edited at all. So you're just getting my fresh thoughts. Love you all. Stay safe, friends.